Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be showing you never before seen video evidence of a ballistic gelatin test that I conducted that not only proves that a back right shot is possible, but it is the probable explanation for what happened to Charlie Kirk on 9/10. Now, before we get into the video evidence, I first have to say this is for scientific purposes only. Myself, my channel, and this video are all here just for scientific purposes in pursuit of the truth and to get justice for what happened to Charlie Kirk on 9/10. I do believe we're being lied to, or at least not being told the whole truth, so I am chasing the truth here, guys, and hopefully you guys are along for the ride with me. If you are, the best way to support the channel is via Patreon. Huge shout out to the Patreon member who sent me this Ballistic Dummy Labs gelatin dummy. If you guys do want to support the channel, please head over there and subscribe to the Patreon. You guys will get first access to all of the content, as well as direct access to me and input in how future tests are conducted, as well as input into any of the future gun reviews that you want to see here on the channel. You guys can also leave a super thanks right here on YouTube. You can also head over to rangedaybro.com, subscribe to our email list, shop using our discounts page or affiliate codes. And lastly, the free way to support the channel is to like, comment, and subscribe. I know it's played out, guys, but these videos are being suppressed and throttled, so every single like, every single comment, and every single subscription helps us get closer to the truth and spread this message to a wider audience. Now, with that being said, for full disclosure, I do want to mention a few things that are incomplete about this test. First and foremost, I work backwards based off of where I believe the shooter to have been and using Google satellite images to estimate distances and elevations and angles of the shot, and I'll put all of that information down in the description below if you guys are interested in seeing the exact distance and angle that we shot this with, as well as the caliber and all that. You can find that all in the description below. I'll mention some of it as we go, but because of that assumption of the shooter's position, as well as using very vague and generalized numbers from Google Maps and satellite images, I came back with a test that did not react in the exact way that we saw on 9/10. However, the way that the dummy did react is extremely telling and does point to the back right shot, but it wasn't perfect, and I want to let you guys know I'm going to be conducting another test in the future. So if you guys want to support that, please considering any of the ways that I mentioned to support the channel. Now, what are the inconsistencies I'm referring to? First and foremost, this is a bust dummy, so it is just from the collarbones up. It does not actually include the chest cavity, which we clearly saw expanding after Charlie was hit. Also, given the rough measurements that I had estimated and the lack of a venue that was appropriate to carry out the shot, we had to make some modifications to even the estimated distances and angles and things like that. So we actually took the shot at a 17-degree angle, even though I had estimated it closer to a 20-degree angle. We also had no concrete data on the degree of deflection of Charlie's seat and where he was sitting based off of that back right shooting position, so we had to guesstimate that. And once I had got up in the shooting position, it was a little difficult to get into. I didn't have time to go back and adjust the dummy because I could clearly see from where I was standing that the bullet would not exit in the front left where we saw it on 9/10, and it would exit more so out of the side around this area, which is exactly what we saw had resulted. But I wondered if the spine would deflect the bullet slightly and maybe cause it to come out a little bit further in front of a straight line axis, which we did not see, and you'll see that here in the footage. And lastly, other little things like the wig that we have is not the same exact hairstyle that Charlie had, and little inconsistencies like that. Now, with that being said, without further ado, let's roll the footage. All right, guys, so we are gonna break this down frame by frame. I just wanted to show you the footage in totality so you can see exactly what I was seeing when I first watched this, but the evidence really does get more damning as you watch it frame by frame. So we'll start with this frame right here. This is from a GoPro filming at 240 frames per second. Once the bullet impacts, you can immediately see that temporary wound cavity, or cavitation as it's been called, and you could see the bullet pulling the gel out as we saw on 9/10. That temporary wound cavity then snaps the chain in the back, which is the weakest point. And then you could see the cavity start to go down as you see some flesh fly off. And then you could see the hair react there shortly afterwards. You see the chain snapped. Again, without the upper chest portion of the dummy and without the correct trajectory, we don't have a mirrored result of the chain movement. However, you do have a mirror result still of the head movement down and to the left as we saw on 9/10. Now, for those of you wondering, we put the pasty there because As I've mentioned in past videos, a bullet going into a hairline, an entry wound in a hairline, is going to be extremely hard to see. And even after the shot, I removed the pasty and pulled up the wig to try to attempt to see the bullet hole. And because it's a mesh pattern underneath, I could not even find the bullet hole. It is that small entering, okay? So that is why the pasty is there as well, to give me a point of aim. Now this side angle is extremely telling here, guys, okay? This cavitation you see from the side angle is what explains the shirt puffing in the back first. So Charlie struck in the back of his hairline first. That expansion blows his shirt up in the back, which is the result of what we saw on camera. And this is the exact explanation for how that happened. Even though the trajectory wasn't 100% correct, you can still see that cavitation happen. You see the chain snap immediately. You see the violent motion of the chain flying up. Again, even with the wrong trajectory, all these things are still happening. Now in this case, with the ballistic tip bullet we were using, it dumped all of its energy within the first couple of inches in the gel. Again, this gel, that trajectory is only about 4.5 to 5 inches long. And these bullets are designed to dump all of their energy in that short amount of distance and not over penetrate. So the next test, we'll likely be using a different bullet type that would result in the type of exit wound that we saw on 910. However, it doesn't change the fact of the head movement, the chain snapping, so on and so forth, and the cavitation that we saw that would explain the puffing up of Charlie's shirt in the back first. Another thing I want to mention is you also see the dummy kind of pop up as we saw. So that's another piece of information that points to a back right shot. And again, in this case, that Hornady critical duty bullet blew out the spine out of the back of the dummy because the trajectory was off, okay? Once in the shooting position, I had a very good feeling it would not result in the exit wound that we saw because the dummy was almost positioned perpendicular from his vision to where I was shooting from. I knew that the result would not come out here. I had hopes that maybe the spine would deflect it and have it come out the front. However, once I was up there, again, we couldn't move the dummy. So an incomplete test. However, it does prove that the back right shot is most likely based off of these other factors. So you can disregard the spine blowing out because obviously we did not see that on 910. However, we did see the head movement, the hair movement, the chain breaking, and that cavitation as well. So this is another angle of the front shot filmed with the iPhone at 240 frames per second at 720p. Again, you see that extreme cavitation happen from the temporary wound cavity. You see that ballistic gelatin stretching out as the projectile passes through. And in this case, it happens up a little bit higher because of that incorrect trajectory instead of happening in the lower neck and upper chest that we saw on 910. But you can clearly see then the cavitation then goes down. You can see the hair begin to react. The chain is snapping and swinging to the front. Since it snapped in the back, it's swinging around to the front. If it would have snapped up here where Charlie's had, it would have swung around to the back as we saw on 910. Now here's another really good side angle that we have. Again, a GoPro at 240 frames per second, filming at 1080p. This one again shows that cavitation. If the shot had been better placed and the trajectory was more in line with what happened on 910, this cavitation that you see right here would have 100% puffed this shirt out as we saw on 910. And from this angle, we actually catch the bullet passing through and impacting the ground over here. So you can actually see why they were so eager to pave over the ground afterwards, because clearly there was a pass through and the bullet is likely still there or was there at one point before they paved over it. But again, you can see the hair movement lagging behind and then finally catching up to the head movement. The chain falls off of the front here. And again, an incomplete dummy, it ends right here. Here's yet another angle of that cavitation in the back that would have caused the plume in the back of the shirt. And this was a wig from a Halloween costume store that we super glued onto this ballistic gelatin dummy. So obviously on a real human being, the hair would not be ripped out from the skin from an impact like that. So after the shot was taken, I went down, I took the camera and I filmed up close the results without having touched the dummy at all. Again, using the bullet that we did, it dumped all of its energy extremely quickly, blew out the back of the spine, which again, wrong trajectory. So we didn't obviously see that on 910. However, again, using a different projectile from a different angle, I believe will result in the exact thing we saw on 910. But I did want to put this information out as quickly as possible. And from the other side of the dummy, you can clearly see that the bullet was not deflected at all by the dummy's spine. And that spine is made of a high density epoxy. From what I'm being told, is the closest thing that Ballistic Dummy Labs has found to replicating the human bone. You can see the cross here on the ground where it landed. So after having evaluated this footage frame by frame, I do believe this is a strong implication that the shot did come from the back right. Again, this test is incomplete and I will be conducting another test here in the near future with a more complete ballistic gelatin dummy that is from the chest up. I'm also going to be using a different bullet, most likely the 77 grain boat tip hollow point bullet, which I believe will result in the exact effect that we saw on 910 with the correct trajectory and with a dummy that actually has an upper chest cavity that can expand and cause the swinging of the chain that we saw and the swinging of the microphone as well. So that being said, guys, I was gonna wait until I had a more complete picture of this test and I could recreate the exact shirt movements and body movements that we saw on 910 to release this footage as one complete package. But in an effort to reach the truth and get this out as quickly as possible, more information is never gonna hurt. So I wanted to put this out immediately. I didn't want to put this out because I didn't want naysayers to say, oh, look, the back of the spine blew out. There's no way it happened from the back right. When in fact, it was the incorrect trajectory in a incomplete ballistic gelatin dummy. So this was a learning experience for me for sure. I think there's a ton of really compelling takeaways from this video and from this footage. But I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Does this change anything for you guys? Are you convinced or does this convince you the other way? Being that I'm a one-man operation, any support you guys have would be extremely helpful. I would love to get a high-speed camera. They're just vastly out of my price range. So if anyone has access to that, if anyone wants to chip into this investigation and this demonstration here, I would love to receive any help. Again, my only goal in this is to uncover the truth and bring justice to the people who actually executed the shot on 910. With that being said, guys, I love every single one of you guys. Remember, Christ is king. Drink a lot of water. Stay safe. Stay dangerous. Range J Bro, out.